The wind howled across the frozen plains like a living creature. The night was darker than usual, the kind that pressed against windows and made even silence feel heavy. Inside a small cabin on the edge of the colony zone, Ethan sat beside a flickering heater listening to the storm outside. He had lived alone for years now, just him, the snow, and the endless quiet of a world that most humans had already forgotten. He reached for his old mug of coffee. It had gone cold. He sighed. Nights like this were always the same, cold, lonely, and endless. Then suddenly a sound broke through the storm. A knock. Soft at first, almost lost under the roar of the wind. He froze. No one ever came here. His nearest neighbor lived 15 miles away. He waited, thinking it was the wind or maybe his imagination. Then came another knock, louder this time. 3 short raps. Desperate. Weak. Ethan stood slowly, heart pounding. He reached for the rifle leaning against the wall. Out here on the edge of civilization, caution meant survival. He moved toward the metal door, each step echoing in the quiet cabin. The knocking came again, shaky, uneven, like whoever was outside could barely stand. Ethan pressed his hand to the cold steel and shouted, "Who's there?" No answer, only the wind. He hesitated for a few seconds. Then, against his better judgment, he unlocked the heavy latch and pulled the door open. The storm hit him in the face like knives of ice. But what stood there made him forget the cold. It was a girl. Small, barefoot, shivering so badly she could hardly stay upright. Her skin had a faint blue glow like moonlight trapped under her flesh. Her hair, silver white, was tangled and wet. She wasn't human. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, let me in." For a moment, Ethan could only stare. He had seen aliens before, on screens, in markets, from a distance. But never like this. Never one so young, so frightened, so fragile. He looked around. No sign of others. No footprints leading away. Just her. He knew the rules. The local government had made it clear. No shelter, no food, no contact with alien refugees. Anyone caught helping them faced prison. But then she looked up. And in those glowing blue eyes, Ethan saw something he hadn't seen in years. Pure fear mixed with hope. Something inside him broke. "Come in," he said quietly. She stepped forward, stumbling on the threshold. He caught her before she fell. Her skin was ice cold, colder than the air outside. He closed the door quickly, locking out the storm. The heater hummed, struggling to warm the room. "Sit here," Ethan said, guiding her toward the small chair near the fire. She obeyed, still shaking. Her lips were pale, her hands covered in tiny frost burns. Her torn clothes looked like they'd been ripped by barbed wire or claws. He grabbed a blanket from his cot and wrapped it around her shoulders. After a few minutes, he heated a small pot of soup and handed her the bowl. She held it with trembling fingers, staring at the steam as if she didn't know what to do. Then she took a small sip and froze. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Silent, slow tears that caught the firelight and shone like glass. Ethan frowned. "Hey, easy. It's just soup." She looked up at him with watery eyes and whispered, "It's warm." Her voice was weak but full of disbelief, as if warmth itself was something rare and precious. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, helps on nights like this." For a long moment they said nothing. Only the crackle of the heater filled the space. Finally she spoke again. "My name is Lyra." "Lyra," he repeated. "I'm Ethan." She nodded, clutching the bowl close to her chest. Her eyes darted to the window, watching the storm outside as if afraid something might follow her. Ethan noticed the faint glow on her skin pulsing slightly, like a heartbeat of light. He also noticed something else, scars. Long, thin scars running down her arms. He leaned closer, his voice gentle. "Lyra, who did this to you?" She didn't answer. Her hands tightened on the bowl. Her lips trembled. Ethan didn't push. He just sat back quietly. Minutes passed. The wind outside howled louder, but inside the cabin the air grew strangely still. The kind of stillness that feels like the world holding its breath. Then a sudden, sharp sound broke the silence, a knock. Hard, firm. On the same door she had come through. Ethan's head snapped toward it. Lyra's eyes went wide, glowing brighter with fear. Another knock. Louder this time. Ethan stood, his heart hammering in his chest. He moved toward the door slowly. Lyra whispered, "Don't open it." Her voice was full of panic now. Her hand shook, spilling some of the soup on the floor. Ethan looked at her, then at the door. The sound came again. 3 heavy bangs that made the walls shake. He grabbed his rifle. The metal felt cold in his hands. Through the narrow window slit, he saw faint red lights flashing outside. Vehicles. Soldiers, maybe. Lyra pressed herself into the corner, her glow dimming, her eyes wet with terror. Ethan whispered, "Stay quiet." The knocking turned into pounding. Whoever was out there wasn't going away. Ethan's breath grew shallow. He glanced back at the small, frightened alien girl who had just asked for warmth. And now, someone was already here to take her away. He gripped the rifle tighter, knowing that whatever happened next, his quiet, lonely life was over, and the night that began with a gentle knock on his door was about to change everything. The pounding on the metal door grew louder, echoing through the cabin like thunder. Each hit made the walls tremble and sent a cold shiver through the room. Ethan's hands tightened on the rifle. He didn't breathe. He could almost hear Lyra's heartbeat from across the room. It was fast, uneven, terrified. "Open up," a voice shouted from outside. It was deep and commanding, the kind of voice trained to be obeyed. Ethan glanced toward Lyra. Her blue glow dimmed as she crouched lower behind the storage crates. Her small hands covered her mouth to stop the sound of her breathing. "Stay there," Ethan whispered. He moved to the door slowly, pretending calm. His voice was steady when he spoke. "Who is it?" "Planetary Patrol," the man barked. "We're searching the area for a fugitive." "Open the door now." Ethan's stomach twisted. He knew exactly who they were looking for. He hesitated for a second too long, and the soldier outside shouted again, "Last warning. Open it or we'll break it down." Ethan cursed under his breath, slung the rifle behind his back, and unlocked the door. The cold rushed in again as the door slid open. 3 figures stood in the snow. Their armor was dark gray with blinking red scanners mounted on their shoulders. The front soldier's face was hard and expressionless, hidden behind a frost-covered visor. "Evening," Ethan said, trying to sound bored. "You guys know it's freezing out, right?" "Step aside," the lead soldier ordered. "We've got a report of an escaped alien specimen. Female, juvenile, blue skin, light emission visible in the dark." Ethan's throat tightened. He forced a shrug. "I haven't seen anyone." The soldier raised a small scanner and waved it past the doorframe. The device beeped faintly, but Ethan shifted his weight to block the soldier's view of the heater, where a faint trail of blue light reflected off the wall from where Lyra was hiding. "May we check inside?" The second soldier asked. Ethan kept his voice casual. "You can look, but there's nothing here except me, dust, and bad coffee." The soldier stepped forward, but the leader lifted a hand. "Make it quick," he ordered. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears as one of them walked around, shining a flashlight across the small cabin. The beam slid across the table, the bed, the heater, then stopped for a second on the floor near the crates. A droplet of soup glistened there. Warm. Fresh. The soldier leaned down, frowning. "This soup's hot," he muttered. Ethan forced a dry laugh. "You know what's colder than this planet?" "My coffee. You want a cup?" The soldier gave him a long stare, then turned away. After another moment, the leader finally said, "Nothing here. Move on." They turned back toward the storm, their boots crunching on the snow. Before leaving, the leader looked back. "If you see anything strange, report it." "She's dangerous," Ethan nodded. "Sure thing." The door closed behind them with a heavy clang. For a long time, Ethan didn't move. He just stood there, listening as their vehicles rumbled away into the distance. Only when the last sound of engines faded did he let out a long breath and lower the rifle. "Lyra," he whispered. The crates shifted, and the small alien girl peeked out, her eyes wide and full of fear. "Are they gone?" He nodded. "For now." She stepped out slowly, her hands trembling. The faint glow returned to her skin, soft and dim. "They wanted me," she whispered. "They'll come back." Ethan sat down on the edge of the table, rubbing his forehead. "You want to tell me why those guys called you a specimen?" Lyra looked away. Her voice was small, barely a whisper. "They had took me from my people. They said my blood could heal. They made me stay in a cold room. Needles, machines, I ran away." Ethan stared at her in silence. The words hit him like a punch. He had seen cruelty before, wars, poverty, hunger, but hearing it from a child who wasn't even human felt heavier somehow. She looked up at him suddenly, her eyes wet. "Why did you lie for me?" He didn't have an answer right away. He looked into the fire, then said softly, "Because no one deserves to freeze to death outside a stranger's door." Lyra's lips parted slightly. Her glow pulsed brighter for a moment, almost like a heartbeat. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You'll get in trouble," she said. He smiled faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time." The storm outside began to fade, the wind losing its voice. Inside, the cabin grew warm again. Ethan brought her another blanket. She sat close to the heater, clutching it around her shoulders, eyes distant. For the first time since she arrived, she looked at peace. But Ethan noticed something he hadn't before. As she warmed up, the blue light under her skin began to form faint, moving patterns like constellations. Stars drifting across her arms, glowing softly through her skin. He stared in wonder. "Lyra, your skin, what is that?" She looked down, a little embarrassed. "It happens when I feel safe," she said quietly. Ethan blinked, not sure what to say. For a long time, neither spoke. The heater crackled softly. Outside, the night grew quiet again, as if holding its breath. Finally, Lyra whispered, "They'll come back. They always do." Ethan looked toward the door, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll be ready for them next time." She tilted her head. "You'll help me?" He nodded. "You knocked on my door, kid. That makes you my responsibility now." For the first time, she smiled. A small, trembling smile that reached her eyes. Ethan didn't know it yet, but that moment, the smile of a scared alien child, was the start of something far greater than either of them could imagine. Because outside, beyond the clouds, far above the storm, something else had already received her signal, and the next time someone came knocking on his door, they wouldn't be human. The morning came quietly. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside buried under a smooth blanket of white. The rising sun made the ice sparkle like diamonds. Inside the small cabin, warmth hummed softly from the heater, and for the first time in years, Ethan didn't wake up to silence. He heard a soft humming sound. Lyra sat near the window, holding a small metal spoon in her hands, twisting it curiously under the light. Every few seconds, her skin glowed faintly, and the spoon began to bend like it was being pulled by invisible threads. Ethan froze in the doorway, watching her. "You're doing that?" She gasped and dropped the spoon instantly, her glow fading. "I didn't mean to. I was just thinking," he smiled gently. "Relax, I'm not angry, just surprised." Lyra looked down, embarrassed. "When I think too much, things move." Ethan nodded slowly. "Telekinesis, huh? Never met anyone who could do that." She tilted her head. "Humans can't?" He chuckled. "Not unless we cheat with machines." Lyra didn't laugh. Her eyes drifted back to the window, where the frozen landscape stretched into silence. "I wasn't made to move things. They said I was made to heal." Ethan frowned. "Made?" She nodded. "In the labs. I was born there. Not like normal children. I was made from something old, something they found under the ice." The words chilled him more than the wind ever could. "You mean someone created you?" She nodded again, voice trembling. "They called me Project Lyra. They said my blood could fix broken flesh, broken bones, broken machines." Her hands gripped her blanket tightly. "They said I was too dangerous to let go." Ethan took a slow breath, trying to process it. The girl sitting before him wasn't just a runaway refugee. She was a living miracle, something the whole galaxy would fight to own. "Those soldiers," he said quietly, "they weren't just patrol. They were there to take you back." Lyra looked at him, fear returning to her eyes. "They hurt the ones who tried to hide me before. I can't let them find me again." Ethan moved closer, his boots soft on the wooden floor. "Listen, Lyra, no one's taking you. Not while I'm alive." Her small blue fingers clutched the edge of his sleeve. "You'll get hurt," he smiled faintly. "Wouldn't be the first time." Silence filled the room again, broken only by the faint crackle of fire. Outside, the world looked calm, but Ethan knew calm never lasted long out here. He poured 2 cups of instant coffee, one for himself and one he pushed toward her. She sniffed it curiously, wrinkling her nose. "It smells burnt," he laughed. "Yeah, that's how you know it's real coffee." She smiled slightly, a soft, shy smile that made the cabin feel alive again. But her peace didn't last long. A small red light blinked on Ethan's old comms console. He frowned, walking over to it. "Strange. I don't use this thing anymore." The light blinked faster. Then the speaker crackled. "Signal detected. Unauthorized frequency." Coordinates locked, Lyra jumped up. They found me! Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, that's impossible. I turned everything off. She ran to the table where broken scraps of metal and wires were spread out. Hidden under a cloth was a small device, something she had built from his spare parts. It was glowing softly. I tried to call my people, she said, tears filling her eyes. I didn't know they'd trace it so fast. Ethan's heart dropped. You mean the patrol? They'll come, she said weakly. They always come. Ethan grabbed his jacket. Then we have to move now. She shook her head. They'll track the signal, no matter where we go. He looked at the tiny device and then at her. Can you stop it? She hesitated. I can destroy it. But the energy, do it, Lyra nodded. Her hands began to glow. The light built quickly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The air vibrated, and the metal parts of the cabin started to shake. Ethan covered his eyes as a burst of blue light exploded from her palms, engulfing the device completely. When it was over, smoke filled the room. The signal light was gone. Lyra collapsed to her knees, weak and trembling. Ethan rushed to her. Hey, easy. She looked pale, the glow fading from her skin. It's gone. But I used too much. He helped her to the bed and covered her with a blanket. Rest. You did great. Her eyes closed slowly and she whispered something faint before sleep took her. They won't stop, Ethan. They'll never stop? He sat beside her for a long time, watching the soft rise and fall of her breath. She looked peaceful again, just a lost child dreaming in a strange world. But Ethan's mind raced. He knew what she meant. If she was truly made to heal, to fix anything, she was worth more than gold, worth more than life itself to the powerful, and they would come for her. He glanced at his rifle, then at the window. In the distance, a faint line of smoke rose into the sky, a ship landing too far for details but too close for comfort. Ethan stood slowly, his jaw set. Let them come, he muttered, because this time he wasn't just protecting a girl. He was protecting the last bit of innocence left in a cruel galaxy, and he had no idea that saving her would change the fate of more than just one world. The sun had barely risen when Ethan woke to a low rumble outside. The sound was distant, but it grew louder every second, mechanical, heavy, unmistakable. Engines. He moved quietly to the window. Through the thin frost, he saw 3 armored transports cutting through the snow, their red lights blinking in rhythm. The same soldiers, maybe more. They were coming straight toward his cabin. Ethan's stomach tightened. He turned to Lyra, who was still asleep under a blanket. Her skin glowed faintly, steady and calm now. She looked peaceful, like a child who had finally escaped her nightmares. He didn't want to wake her. But he had no choice. Lyra, he said softly, shaking her shoulder. We've got trouble. Her eyes opened instantly. She sat up, fear already in her face. They found us, didn't they? He nodded. Yeah, but this time I'm not letting them take you. She grabbed his arm. You can't fight them, Ethan. They have weapons, ships. He smiled faintly, trying to hide his own fear. Then it's a good thing I'm bad at following the odds. He walked to the corner of the cabin and opened an old metal chest. Inside were tools, batteries, and a few explosives from his mining days. He hadn't used them in years, but now they felt like old friends returning. Lyra stood beside him, trembling. They'll hurt you. He glanced at her. They'll have to find me first. Outside, the engine stopped. The crunch of boots echoed in the snow. Voices followed. Ethan moved quickly, guiding Lyra down into the cellar, a hidden space beneath the floor used for supplies. Stay down here, he whispered. No sound, no light. Understand? Her glowing skin dimmed instantly, her eyes filling with tears. You shouldn't do this for me. He touched her shoulder gently. I already did the moment I opened that door. Then he closed the trapdoor above her and covered it with an old rug. A heavy bang shook the cabin. Ethan Hale! A voice shouted through the door. We know she's here. Hand her over and we'll forget this ever happened. Ethan took a deep breath and opened the door. 3 soldiers stood there, guns raised. Behind them, a commander in a black coat watched silently, his face hidden behind a breathing mask. Morning, gentlemen, Ethan said calmly. You're back awful soon. What, miss my coffee? The leader stepped forward. Where's the girl? Ethan's expression didn't change. You mean the one freezing to death in your scanner's imaginations? Haven't seen her. The commander's eyes narrowed behind the visor. You're lying. He raised a small handheld device. The scanner beeped rapidly. Lyra's faint energy signature was still detectable even through the floor. Final warning, human, the commander said. Move aside. Ethan exhaled slowly. You'll have to kill me first. The soldiers raised their rifles. Before they could fire, Ethan hit a switch on the wall. The cabin lights flickered, then exploded. The shockwave knocked the soldiers backward. Smoke filled the room. Ethan dove behind a table, grabbing his rifle. Shots rang out, sparks flying across metal walls. Outside, the soldiers regrouped, shouting orders. The commander barked, "Move in! Take him alive!" Ethan fired again, hitting one of their scanners, making it burst in a shower of sparks. He ducked behind cover, breathing hard. He wasn't a soldier, just a stubborn man with old weapons and too much heart. In the cellar, Lyra covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. She could feel every vibration through the floor. Each gunshot felt like thunder in her bones. Then, silence. Only the wind. She waited, trembling. The silence stretched too long. Her small hands glowed faintly blue as she pushed open the cellar hatch and peeked out. The cabin was half destroyed. Smoke drifted through broken walls. Ethan lay near the door, his shoulder bleeding. 2 soldiers were still standing, one moving toward him with a gun raised. Lyra stepped out before she even thought. "Stop," she screamed. The soldiers turned and froze. Her body began to glow brighter than before, light pulsing from her skin like waves of fire. The air around her shimmered. The rifles in their hands bent and twisted like soft metal. Then the light surged outward in a single flash. The soldiers dropped unconscious, their armor sparking. The commander stumbled back, shielding his face from the blinding radiance. When it faded, she stood there, breathing hard, her knees shaking. Ethan looked up, dazed. "Lyra, what did you—" She knelt beside him, her glowing hands pressing over his wound. Warm light sank into his skin, closing the bleeding cut before his eyes. He stared in disbelief. "You healed me," she nodded weakly. "It's what I was made for." Her glow dimmed again. She looked at the fallen soldiers, guilt in her eyes. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt." Ethan sat up slowly, wincing. Sometimes, Lyra, fighting back isn't about hurting others. It's about stopping them from hurting what's right. She didn't answer, but her small hand found his. He squeezed it gently. Outside, the remaining patrol vehicles began to pull back. They must have seen the energy burst and decided it wasn't worth losing more men. The engines roared as they disappeared into the snow. Ethan let out a long breath, leaning back against the wall. "We won this round." Lyra looked at him with quiet eyes. "They'll bring more," he smiled, tired but unbroken. "Then we'll be ready." For a long time, neither spoke. The fire crackled faintly in what was left of the cabin. Snow fell through the holes in the roof, melting as it touched her glowing skin. Ethan looked at her and said softly, "You're not a weapon, Lyra. You're a person. Remember that." She looked at him with something between hope and sorrow. "You see me like I'm human." He smiled faintly. "Maybe being human isn't about what we are. It's about what we choose to protect." And for the first time since she'd escaped, Lyra believed that maybe she wasn't just an experiment. Maybe she was something worth saving. But far above the clouds orbiting the frozen world, a signal blinked to life. Someone had seen the energy surge. And this time it wasn't the patrol. Something far greater was coming. The night sky above the frozen colony glowed faintly red from the smoldering remains of Ethan's cabin. The storm had calmed, but the world was no quieter. Smoke rose in slow spirals, melting into the cold air. Ethan sat near what was left of the fire, his arm bandaged, his clothes burned and torn. The warmth of Lyra's healing had stopped the bleeding, but exhaustion weighed on him like iron. Lyra sat close, her small frame wrapped in a blanket, her silver hair catching the light of the dying flames. Her skin pulsed softly with blue light, each rhythm slower than the last. "You should rest," Ethan said quietly. She shook her head. "I can't, not yet," he frowned. "You used too much energy again. You almost passed out." Lyra looked up at the sky, her eyes full of stars. "My people need to know I'm alive." "They'll come if I call them," Ethan sighed. "We've been through this. Last time you tried, the patrol came instead." "I know," she whispered, "but this time I can do it right." She reached for a small device made from scrap parts she had gathered, bits of his old communication unit mixed with glowing alien crystals she carried from her escape. The strange mix of human and alien technology shimmered in her hands. Ethan stared at it warily. "That thing nearly got us killed. This time I'll shield the signal," she said softly. "It won't be strong enough for the humans to trace, but my people will hear it." Her voice carried a quiet determination Ethan had never seen in her before. He nodded finally. "All right. Let's try your way," Lyra smiled faintly. "Thank you." She placed her glowing fingers over the small machine. A faint hum filled the room. Blue light spilled over the walls, dancing like waves of water. Ethan felt the air grow warmer, softer, almost alive. Outside, the snow lifted gently from the ground as if drawn upward by unseen hands. The stars above flickered brighter. Then suddenly the device emitted a soft, musical tone, like the voice of a child calling across space. Lyra's eyes closed as she whispered something in a language Ethan couldn't understand. It wasn't just words, it was emotion, raw and deep. When the light faded, the air grew still again. She slumped forward, breathing hard. "It's done," she said weakly. "They'll find me." Ethan caught her before she could fall. "You're burning yourself out, Lyra." She gave a tired smile. "That's what humans do too, when they care." He looked at her, surprised by her words. Then he laughed softly. "Guess we're not so different after all." But outside, far beyond the horizon, something moved in the sky. A faint streak of light, small, fast, and descending. Ethan didn't notice at first. But Lyra did. Her head lifted sharply. "That's them." He followed her gaze and frowned. "That's too fast for a rescue ship." The streak split into 3 smaller trails descending like burning meteors. As they neared, the faint shape of drones appeared. Military ones. Ethan's face hardened. "That's not your people." "That's the lab." Lyra's heart sank. No, they came before my message reached home." Ethan grabbed his rifle, his voice calm but urgent. "Then we don't have much time." The drones broke through the clouds, scanning the ground with red beams. One beam passed over the ruins of the cabin, stopping for a moment before locking on. "They found us," Ethan muttered. Lyra's hands began to glow again. "I can stop them," he turned sharply. "No! Every time you use that power, they trace it. You'll bring more." Her eyes filled with tears. "Then what do we do?" He looked around, the burned cabin, the endless snow, the rising smoke. "We run." They packed what little they had, 1 blanket, a few tools, a piece of dried bread. Ethan led her out through the back, moving into the icy forest that bordered the frozen plain. The snow crunched beneath their boots. Behind them, the drones descended, red light sweeping the ground. Lyra stumbled, her breath coming in short gasps. "Ethan, I'm slowing you down." He turned, lifting her into his arms without a word. She was light, too light, like carrying a fragile flame. "You're not slowing me down," he said. "You're the reason I'm still running." For hours they moved through the dark woods. The light of the drones flashed through the trees behind them, closer and closer. Ethan's legs burned, but he kept going. Finally, they reached the edge of a frozen cliff overlooking a valley of ice. Below, a river of frozen crystal stretched for miles. Ethan stopped, breathing hard. "We can't go farther without crossing that." Lyra looked up, weak but calm. "Then we cross," he shook his head. "The ice won't hold both of us." Her eyes met his. "It doesn't have to." Before he could answer, she stepped forward. Her hands glowed and the ice below shimmered. A faint bridge of light formed across the gap. Thin, fragile, but real. Ethan stared in disbelief. "Lyra," she smiled faintly. "Hurry." They crossed together step by careful step. Behind them, the drones arrived. But when the machines touched the glowing bridge, the energy burst apart, throwing them into the ravine below. On the other side, Ethan collapsed to his knees, laughing in relief. "You did it." Lyra leaned against him, exhausted but smiling. "We did it." He looked at the sky again. "So now what? You think your people heard the call?" Lyra looked up, her eyes reflecting the stars. "They will come. They always come for their lost ones." Ethan smiled softly, though a quiet worry tugged at him. "I hope they're faster than the next set of hunters." She nodded. "They will be." Far above the frozen clouds, unseen by them both, a bright silver shape moved silently through the void. A massive alien ship. Responding to the faint echo of Lyra's signal. Help was coming, but so was something else. And when it arrived, Ethan would learn that protecting Lyra wasn't just about saving a single life. It was about standing between two worlds that were about to collide. The night sky above the valley burned with color. Streaks of light crossed the heavens, some red, some silver. Ethan didn't know which ones were enemies and which were Lyra's people. All he knew was that both were coming. He stood at the edge of the frozen ridge, snow whipping against his face. The faint glow of the bridge Lyra had created was fading behind them, melting into mist. He turned toward her. She was sitting near a cluster of ice rocks, her small hands pressed to her chest. Her light was dimmer than ever. "You used too much again," he said quietly. She nodded, her voice weak. "They're close. Both of them." Ethan crouched beside her. "How do you know?" She pointed to the sky. "I can feel their signals. The ones who hurt me, and my people too." He followed her gaze. In the distance, two ships appeared, one dark and angular, the other glowing softly like a drifting star. Ethan's heart pounded. "Then we're right in the middle." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "They'll fight each other. I didn't want this." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we make sure they don't find a reason to." The ground shook as the first ship descended, the black one sharp and cold like a blade. Floodlights swept across the snow. Soldiers emerged, their armor glinting under the moonlight. Ethan pulled her behind the rocks. "Stay low." They watched as the second ship descended in the distance, larger, brighter, shaped like a crescent moon. The air trembled when it landed, and a warm, soft light spread across the valley. Lyra's voice trembled. "That's them. My people." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then it's time." The soldiers spread out, their leader stepping forward. It was the same commander from before. His armor scorched, his mask cracked, but his voice still full of authority. "Project Lyra," he shouted, his voice echoing over the ice. "Surrender yourself and the human will live." Ethan glanced at Lyra. "They don't mean that." "I know," she whispered. He looked down at her, his jaw tight. "You trust your people?" Lyra nodded. "They won't hurt you, but they'll fight to protect me." He stood, gripping his rifle, and shouted across the snow. "You want her? You'll have to go through me." The commander raised his weapon. "So be it." The first shot split the air. Ethan ducked behind the rocks as the ice shattered around him. The sound of energy blasts filled the valley. The soldiers moved forward in formation. Then the second ship responded. Beams of blue light struck the ground between them, cutting off the soldiers' advance. The snow exploded in a cloud of steam. Ethan looked up and saw tall, slender figures stepping out from the glowing ship. Lyra's people. Their skin shimmered with the same faint glow as hers. They didn't carry guns, only staff-like weapons that pulsed with energy. The air between the two groups vibrated with tension. Human soldiers on one side, alien protectors on the other, and Ethan and Lyra trapped in the middle. "Ethan," Lyra whispered, gripping his hand. "Don't let them fight, please." He hesitated only a second before standing up again, hands raised. "Stop, there's been enough death." No one moved. The alien commander, taller than any human, stepped forward, his eyes like molten silver. "Human," he said in a deep, calm voice, "you sheltered one of our children. Why?" Ethan looked back at Lyra, then faced him. "Because she needed help. Because she was scared. Because no one else would." The alien leader nodded slowly. "Then you've done more than most of your kind." The human commander laughed harshly. "Don't act like he's a hero. He's a traitor! He hid stolen property." Ethan's voice rose. "She's not property. She's a child." The alien leader's gaze turned cold. "If you call her property again, I will erase your name from the stars." The soldiers hesitated. Even they felt the weight of his words. Lyra stepped forward, weak but brave. "Stop fighting, please." Her voice echoed through the valley, carried by her faint blue light. "I never wanted anyone to die for me. I just wanted to be free." She turned toward the humans. "I forgive you." Then toward her own people. "But don't become like them." For a moment, the entire valley fell silent. The wind stopped. The ships hummed softly in the background. Then the alien leader nodded. "Your will is ours, Lyra." But the human commander raised his weapon again, shouting, "She's too dangerous to live." He fired. The blast hit Ethan instead. He fell backward, the impact throwing him to the ground. Lyra screamed, running to him as his rifle slipped from his hand. Blood spread across his coat. "No," she whispered, her hands glowing bright blue. "Stay with me," he smiled weakly. "Told you I'd protect you." Don't talk, she said, tears streaming down her face. Please. Her glow intensified until it filled the whole valley with light. Every ship, every soldier, every being stopped to watch. The blue radiance poured from her hands into Ethan's chest, healing the wound, mending the torn flesh. But it came at a cost. Her light flickered weaker and weaker. When it was over, Ethan gasped for breath, and Lyra collapsed beside him, her glow gone. He held her in his arms. Lyra, stay with me. Her faint smile returned. You're safe now. The alien leader approached slowly, his voice heavy with sorrow. She gave everything she had to heal you. Ethan's voice cracked. No, there must be something you can do. The leader looked to the sky. Perhaps, but her spirit will decide. The silver ship began to hum again, surrounding Lyra in soft light. Her small body rose gently into the air. The glow returned, faint but real. Her voice echoed softly as if from a distance. Thank you, Ethan, for showing me what it means to be human. And with that, she disappeared into the light, carried upward into her people's ship. Ethan fell to his knees, staring at the empty space where she had been. The alien leader bowed his head. She will live, but she must rest among her own. Remember her, human. She remembered you. The ship lifted silently into the sky, vanishing among the stars. Ethan stood alone in the snow, wind whispering through the valley. He looked up, whispering softly, Goodbye, Lyra. And high above, one bright star flickered in response. The world had gone quiet again. The battle was over, but the silence it left behind felt heavier than any war. The valley, once torn apart by fire and light, now lay still under a pale dawn. The sky had turned soft pink and snowflakes drifted lazily, covering the scars of the night before. Ethan stood alone among the ruins. His cabin was gone. The patrol ships were gone. Even the footprints in the snow had started to fade. Only one thing remained, the glow in the sky, faint and silver, where Lyra's ship had vanished into the clouds. He watched that light until it disappeared. Then he whispered, Goodbye, kid. His voice cracked, the sound lost in the cold air. He walked back toward what was left of the cabin. The metal walls had collapsed, the roof half buried under snow. Inside, the fire pit was cold and dark. He knelt beside it, picking up the small shard Lyra had dropped before she left, a tiny crystal that still glowed softly blue. When he touched it, warmth spread through his fingers. Not heat exactly, something deeper. It was like the feeling of being seen, of being remembered. Ethan smiled faintly. Guess you left me something to remember you by. He kept the shard close to his heart, hanging it from an old leather cord around his neck. Its gentle glow followed him wherever he went. Weeks passed. The colony soldiers never came back. Maybe they were too afraid. Maybe the higher-ups buried the incident. Out here on the edge of nowhere, no one cared much about one stubborn human and a lost alien child. Ethan rebuilt his home, smaller this time. Just enough space for one man and his memories. Every night he sat by the heater with his coffee, staring out the window at the endless snow. And every night he saw that same silver glow rise faintly in the sky, as if a piece of her was watching over him. Sometimes he talked to her. Hope you're doing all right up there, he'd say quietly. Hope they're treating you better than we did. It was strange, he thought. Before Lyra, he had lived like a ghost, no friends, no visitors, no purpose. But now, every sunrise reminded him of the warmth she brought to his frozen world. She had taught him that even the smallest act of kindness could echo across galaxies. One evening, as the sky burned orange with the coming storm, the radio on his table flickered to life. It hadn't worked since the fight. He froze, staring at it. A faint, familiar voice whispered through the static. Ethan, can you hear me? He nearly dropped his cup. Lyra? Static hissed, then cleared slightly. It's me, her soft voice said. We made it home. I wanted to thank you for saving me. Ethan's throat tightened. You're alive? Yes, she said gently. My people healed me. They wanted to erase my memory to protect our world, but I asked to remember you. He smiled, tears filling his eyes. You always were too stubborn to forget. She laughed softly, the sound like distant wind chimes. My people don't understand what you did, she continued. They think you acted out of duty. But I know you acted out of love. Ethan looked at the blue shard hanging from his neck. You were worth it, Lyra, every second. Silence followed, soft and heavy. Then she said, They've given me a name now, Lyra Hale, after you. His breath caught. You didn't have to. I wanted to, she said. Because you gave me my first home. Because you showed me what it means to be human. The transmission flickered, her voice fading. The stars are far apart, Ethan. But maybe someday I'll find my way back to your door. Then the radio went quiet again. Ethan sat there for a long time, staring at the dead screen. Then he laughed through his tears. You already did, kid. You already did. Years passed. The valley changed. The snow melted earlier each year. New settlers came, building homes near the ridge where the great battle once burned. They called it Lyra's Crossing, a name passed down without knowing its story. But Ethan knew. He grew old there, his hair turning silver like hers, the glowing shard still around his neck. Some nights, when the wind was right, he swore he could hear her voice calling softly across the stars. And one night, many years later, a strange light appeared in the sky again, brighter than anything he had ever seen. It moved slowly, gracefully, like it was searching for something. Ethan stepped outside, the cold biting at his skin. The light stopped directly above his cabin. It shone down on him, bathing him in silver warmth. He smiled up at it, whispering, Took you long enough. And for the first time in many years, the loneliness left him. The light grew brighter until the whole valley glowed like daylight. Then it faded, leaving behind a single star shining stronger than all the rest. People in the colony said a new star had appeared that night. One that never dimmed, not even in the storm. They called it Lyra's star, but Ethan knew better. It wasn't just a star. It was a promise. That kindness travels farther than any ship. That one small act of humanity can outshine even the coldest world. And that somewhere among the stars an alien girl once knocked on a lonely human's door and changed what it meant to be human forever.